If ever a true land of enchantment existed, Ireland, affectionately known as the Emerald Isle, may just be it. A deep, rich history, architecture dating back centuries, lush, green landscapes, incredible food, pubs, lots and lots of pubs, and of course, Guinness. We are going to explore it all on this episode, and as always, I am glad you are here for it. I'm Todd Newton. Welcome to the Tattooed Traveler, and welcome to Dublin, Ireland. The capital of the Republic of Ireland, Dublin, stems from the Gaelic Dublin, or Black Pool. Not nearly as romantic or mystical or charming as one might expect from a city that is so rich in history and so full of great pubs. Why not start here in the Temple Bar area, huh? This red building, you can't miss it, is one of the most recognized and visited pubs in the world. This is the Temple Bar Pub, and it dates back to 1840. Guaranteed I am not the only person that heads straight to Temple Bar from the airport. I've been thinking about this place for weeks. This is the pub that all other pubs aspire to be, and with good reason. You can't just call it a bar. It's not doing the place justice, but if you love old watering holes, taverns, and pubs like this, live music venues, then you owe it to yourself to visit the Temple Bar Pub at least once, or twice, or come as much as you want. We don't judge. Hey, speaking of live music, I'm talking traditional Irish music on stage every day from open till close. But the reason I wanted to get here so early is for an Irish breakfast, which refers to a pint of Guinness before noon. It was always good enough for the famed author James Joyce. It's good enough for me. As they say here in Dublin, sláinte means to your health and to the great city of Dublin. And right after that first pint, when your belly starts really rumbling, the food here ain't too bad. Look at that. The Temple Bar Pub also has the largest whiskey collection here in Ireland, over 400 bottles for you to sample. And they have almost as many souvenir t-shirts for you to choose from. Make sure you grab one to take home. And if you can find the hidden Tattooed Traveler sticker here in the pub, you'll also find the luck of the Irish. Now, contrary to the way things may look based on the way we kicked this episode off, there is much more to Dublin, Ireland than alcohol consumption. Though it does seem to be a favorite national pastime. I can say that. Top 3 for sure. Guinness is one thing. I can do Guinness. Irish coffee. I'm very much looking forward to trying Irish coffee tomorrow morning before my flight home. But whiskey, Irish whiskey, is something that I just never really got into. The taste never really appealed to me, but I realized once I got here that it was because I was uneducated. I didn't know anything about true Irish whiskey. That's all going to change today as you and I go inside the Jameson Distillery. Or at least that was my intention. But listen, things don't always work out that way. And if I'm being upfront, not all reviews and features that we do here on the Tattooed Traveler can be glowing and positive. Life just doesn't work that way, and that's no way to build credibility with your audience. I know that Bow Street is a former factory, but I have to say I was hoping for a little more. Although I do love that chandelier. If I had a man cave, I'd have that chandelier. I wanted to see more of the actual process, and what I got from this tour felt more like a history lesson, something that I could have gotten just by reading their Wikipedia page. Jameson Distillery at Bow Street offers a handful of different types of tours. I opted for the one that costs £30, which is the equivalent of about $38 US. They have one that costs up to £120, where you can bottle your own Jameson Black Barrel. The history is interesting, don't get me wrong, dating back to 1780. the ambition and vision of John Jameson, his wife Margaret, his entire family, actually. The way the brand overcame many challenges that would have knocked other companies right out of business. So that's Katie, our tour guide, and she was fantastic. Super kind, personable, knowledgeable. The 45-minute tour consists of 3 rooms. The first is a media room. This is more of a science lab, actually, that gives you the entire process of distilling whiskey. And then this is the tasting room, the final stop, where you get to taste 3 of Jameson's more popular brands, the Crested, the Original, and then the Black Barrel there on the far right. I guess my major criticism is that we were informed just a few minutes into the tour that the majority of the Jameson magic actually happens in Cork County, which is almost 3 hours away. So you're told right out of the gate that what you're going to experience is limited, but you do learn something. And that's one of the beauties of travel, new experiences. What I took away, the biggest takeaway from the tour here at Jameson Distillery, Bow Street, is sadly, I still do not care for the taste of whiskey, but no one can ever say that I didn't give it a fair shot. But if you've got a hankering for a little snort and you're over 18, your ticket does entitle you to a complimentary drink on your way out. Something I really enjoy about Dublin and about a lot of cities on this side of the Atlantic, it's very walkable. It's an old city designed around a medieval town where walking and traveling by horse and cart were the only way to get from one place to another. And the next stop on our itinerary is the Guinness Storehouse. Now, if the Jameson Distillery was, 3 stars out of 5? Guinness knocks it out of the park with this tour. And I'm talking about the 26 euro tour, the self-guided tour. That's about $28.50 in US dollars. And you get to see everything, more than you are expecting to see. 5 stories, more than 5 stories, 5 floors of Guinness information. And you have the option to upgrade to one of the premium experiences. One takes you underground into their tunnels. Another teaches you how to pour the perfect pint of Guinness. But regardless of which tour you take, you'll really become immersed in the history and the heart of what is Ireland's most iconic beer, one of the most iconic beers in the world. What I came to really appreciate is the detail, the time, the passion, I guess you could say, that goes into every single pint of Guinness. As they will tell you here, this is a tour that is hopping. Get it? Hops. Hopping with entertainment. It's an immersive experience from grain to glass. And this building is where it all happens and where it has been happening for over 250 years. You're literally walked through each step of the brewing process, 232 degrees Celsius. That would be right around 450 degrees Fahrenheit. One thing I want to mention about this building before I forget, Arthur Guinness himself signed a 9,000-year lease on this building, and it was sealed in 1759. A 9,000-year lease. To me, that shows an incredible dedication to his vision and to the product that he was creating for people, not only here in Ireland, but eventually for people around the world. Here's the entire process. I'm a big fan of step 11 there, which is enjoy, and we will at the end of the tour. If you're a fan of Guinness, or even if you've just ordered 1 or 2 at your local pub when you were out with friends, you know that it's not just a pour, it's more of a presentation. And if it does seem like a regular, normal, average pour, then the bartender just ain't doing it right. We'll learn more about that momentarily. But of course, the highlight of any brewery or distillery tour is the tasting, the sampling, and they do it up right here at Guinness Storehouse. These samples are really just a teaser for the pint that your ticket entitles you to at the very end. As of today, the Guinness family still owns 51% of the brewery. There's the man we have to thank for it all, Arthur Guinness, who was only 34 when he signed that 9,000-year lease. He's also credited with founding the first Sunday school here in Dublin in 1786. As promised, now let's learn more about the perfect pour. There are two parts to it. Where does it all begin?
So the glass has to be clean. You have to do it at a 45-degree angle. And then straighten the glass up like so. Let it set for about 90 seconds.
Yeah, 90 seconds to let that darker stout slowly sink under the creamy white foam. Then that second pour to top it off. And contrary to what others may tell you, the folks here at Guinness say the perfect pint is served slightly chilled in a room temperature glass. Doesn't get any better than that. As we make our way to our next destination, which is St. Patrick's Cathedral, we're going to pass through Buchanan Street. And I want to point this out because this is pretty much the main shopping district here in Dublin. It's pedestrianized, which means, save for those supply and delivery vans there is no traffic allowed. And you'll find some of the usual chain stores here, some souvenir shops. The buildings are always nice to look at, and you can pick something up for the folks back home. Here we are just north of St. Patrick's Cathedral. You'll see it in the background there. It's St. Patrick's Park, just a lovely park, opened by King Edward VII in July of 1902. And it was actually part of the redevelopment of this area that was funded by the Guinness family. It's the perfect complement to this beautiful cathedral. The present building that you see here dates back to 1220, and over the centuries, this cathedral has survived a lot. Wars and revolutions and religious reformation. So, like a lot of places that we're lucky enough to visit here on the Tattooed Traveler, it's a cathedral with some stories to tell. And they welcome all visitors to either tour the cathedral or to take part in their worship services. Admission for the tour includes the audio guide here and will cost you about €10 for adults. That's about $11 US. That, of course, grants you access to the cathedral as well as to exhibits like this stone slab, which was covering a well in St. Patrick's Park that historians believe may have been the very well in which St. Patrick baptized his converts more than 1,500 years ago. 5 other slabs were discovered, but this was the only one covering a well. So that's a real glimpse into ancient history right there. These statues are of prominent individuals who were associated with the cathedral. They've been deemed some of the finest examples of 19th century sculpture anywhere in Ireland. Okay, now the story behind the Door of Reconciliation here fascinates me. It goes back to 1492. 2 families, the Butlers and the Fitzgeralds, and they were like the Hatfields and McCoys times 10. They both wanted one of their own to hold a position of power in the community, and they fought and fought and fought outside the cathedral. The Fitzgeralds started getting the upper hand, so the Butlers retreated inside. The Fitzgeralds offered a truce if only the Butlers would come back out, but they refused, thinking that they would be slaughtered. Well, as a gesture of good faith, the head of the Fitzgerald family ordered that hole cut in the door, and he put his arm through it, like you saw me do, as a gesture of peace. The Butlers came out, and all was right with the world. So if you've ever wondered where the old Irish phrase, to chance your arm, comes from, now you know. And something else I learned on my visit here today, Jonathan Swift, the author of Gulliver's Travels, used to preach here in the 1700s, and I love that quote, talking about looking out from the pulpit and seeing people sleeping in the congregation. Here is that pulpit from which he gave many a sermon, rather lengthy sermons too, by all accounts. He spent much of his early adult life in England, returned to Dublin to serve as Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and he did so for the last 30 years of his life. He's buried here underneath the cathedral floor. He's far from alone. From what I read, there are around 700 burials on the site here. And in terms of construction, the cathedral that you're looking at took just under 40 years to construct. It replaced an earlier, probably wooden and much smaller church. These stained glass windows, which I could stare at all day and never get tired of. They tell stories and teach lessons. Many of them date back to the late 1800s. Such a magnificent place, and no visit is complete without spending a little bit of time in St. Patrick's Park next door. I saw a lot of people walking dogs, families with small children playing, and on weekends, they have a farmer's market, which is supposed to be quite extraordinary. Have to put that on the to-do list for our next visit. All right, if you don't mind going a couple of steps off the beaten path here, I think you'll find this interesting. This is called the Hungry Tree. The tree was planted an estimated 110 years ago here on Constitution Hill, right next to this cast iron park bench, and over time, it has devoured it. And that's something. It's become quite the tourist attraction here in Dublin. So my plan for this evening, if it's all right with you, was to make it an early night because I have that early flight home tomorrow. So I thought maybe I'd fill my belly with a full Irish breakfast. Who doesn't love breakfast for dinner? It's the best. My mom used to make it for me and my brother when we were kids. Traditionally, it consists of an egg, 2 sausage links, 2 bacon, grilled tomato, baked beans, black pudding, white pudding, toast, of course, and a flat white. Decaf, of course, otherwise I never would have gotten any shut-eye, but I have coffee covered. The following morning, before my early flight, I made my way to the Banks on College Green, a bar here in Dublin known, revered, respected for their famed Irish coffee. I love the interior here. This is the old Belfast Bank, dating back to 1892.
There you go, that's your Irish coffee. Enjoy.
And here's what makes it special.
And indeed, yeah, perfect Irish coffee. You got to have a couple of key components. You got to have a good quality whiskey. We use Teeling's whiskey here in the Bank Bar and Restaurant. You got to have a smaller glass than you think, because if it's too big, it gets cold too quickly, and you're going to enjoy your drink. It's just going to be a lukewarm disaster at the end. You've got to warm your glass. Very key component there. Coffee, and don't whip your cream over too thick either. There, that's the one thing I got to point out there. You're going to be able to pour it over the back of the spoon nicely, and it just sits on top. Then you're going to enjoy your drink.
You know, they say it's been a really good trip if you head home tired and hungry. And I could definitely use a nap. I don't think I'll have to eat again for about a week after that full Irish breakfast, but we covered a lot of ground together. We learned to pour the perfect pint. We explored St. Patrick's Cathedral. We did it all, and I'm glad that I got to experience Dublin, Ireland with you. Hey, now would be the perfect time for you to grab your new Tattooed Traveler hoodie and t-shirt. They're waiting for you right now at thetattooedtraveler.com. I'm Todd Newton. Until we meet again a little further down the road, travel safely.